Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Aging Matters in Brevard's ongoing virtual series, Caregiver series. Today, I am absolutely thrilled to be welcoming Jane and Lana from Assisting Hands here in Brevard County. And the topic of the day is managing caregiver challenges. So I'd like to quick start out with a recap of who I am, and then I'm going to let Jane introduce herself and tell a little bit about herself. I'm Beth Shibley, and I'm the director of Sunflower House, a caregiver resource center in Merritt Square Mall. And we exist for the purpose of helping folks who are caregiving for those who who have a loved one, and in the Brevard County. And Jane, tell me a little bit about yourself and about.
Okay, good morning. Thank you, Beth, and thank you, Lana, for all your wonderful support in the past 2 weeks. I appreciate both of you. I'm Jane Peach. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and currently working with Assisting Hands of Brevard Home Care. I've been so grateful for my diverse experiences over the years. I've had the opportunity to work in private practice with individuals, couples, and families, as well as work in various healthcare settings. I've been involved throughout this time in the issues of aging and caregiving. My personal experience as the primary caregiver and patient advocate for my sons who have a chronic illness, as well as both of my parents, certainly, as you know, Beth, increases our knowledge, ability to find resources, and really have increased my passion to continue to be part of this issue and work in this area. And our conversation today is managing caregiver challenges. As we are managing caregiver responsibilities, other events will come into play. So our focus will also be on the physical, environmental, and emotional changes of caregiving during COVID-19 pandemic. Folks may have heard, if you're following any kind of news media, the term quarantine fatigue. And this is as our physical movement is restricted, our access to services are limited, and our friendship and support systems are at a distance. So with any fatigue, our body and mind experiences cellular changes. And this fatigue changes our thought process, our ability to organize our physical space, as well as our emotional reactions. So I had to look at what does that mean for me, as well as other folks that I'm working with. It looks like maybe locking your keys in the car when you've never done that before, misplacing paperwork, you forget to return a phone call, and just get more easily. We may find ourselves tearful for no apparent reason or uncharacteristically impatient and irritable. Another symptom is we may be sleeping more or sleeping less. And both of those things contribute to the behaviors I just mentioned. I want to cite the World Health Organization defines occupational burnout and fatigue as a result from chronic work-related stress. So whether this is at a place of employment or at home, as we fulfill our primary caregiver role, we can experience occupational fatigue. And many times these symptoms remain unknown to others, masked. Even to those closest to us, because we're trying to keep that smile on our face and an upbeat attitude, and hoping that we look like to the folks around us that we're keeping it together.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely
even
agree.
with, yes, again, that is certainly something that I've experienced personally, and have had folks come into session saying this is the only place I can really break down, and it's kind of like, no, it isn't. Really being, yeah.
Especially when we're
being
caregiving,
real with, yes.
Especially when we're caregiving. I mean, among other things, It's one thing if I feel like, at my work, if I'm feeling overwhelmed by a report or a deadline, or my emails are out of control, or my desk looked like a bomb went off. It's a totally different thing if I'm dealing with caregiving and not wanting to show that stress and that to the one I'm caring for, because I don't want them to feel, upset that I'm, they're being stressed, I'm stressed out, or by my siblings and my other people I want to care for. I want to make everybody feel like, I'm strong and I've got this. So I think that it's even exacerbated when you're talking about it being when you're caring for loved ones. So I think that's an excellent point, Jane.
Yeah, absolutely. And we find that even with, and again, kind of referring to the event we're experiencing now with COVID-19, even though we have varied distractions and are busy all day long, we can be isolated, and that certainly, we know, to depression. What was known before and has been found COVID-19, that even with activities at home, keep us busy, as I said, all day long, there are increasing symptoms of low mood. I've attended a couple of webinars presented by Dwight Bain, who's a behavioral health therapist in Florida, and Central Florida Behavioral Health. And they noted a 900% surge in mental health needs. And that is inpatient, outpatient services.
In Florida, Jane? In Florida?
In Florida,
wow.
Yes. It's individual and family sessions. It's appointments involving medication to a primary care or to a psychiatrist. And also there was a 45% increase in mental health hotline calls. And that's a statistic they presented in mid-April when I took a seminar with them via Zoom. Yeah, so again, we know there's also more incidents of calls to domestic violence hotlines. Again, it has really exacerbated, the isolation has exacerbated a lot of symptoms. I wanted to share a slide that you and I've talked about, Beth, defining symptoms and behaviors we may experience as a caregiver. This slide was from the webinar I just spoke of, and it translates to the COVID-19, but it could be any life-changing event. There's 3 zones, and I'm just going to bullet a couple things quickly, and then I would love to hear your thoughts, Beth. The fear zone, greatest thing over the years is avoidance. There's no energy, and they're just too anxious to interact with people. And they tend to find fault and feel negative with people and situations. And again, these both being new behaviors. And briefly in the learning is, how do I avoid obsessing? And observe if you're acting versus reacting. And then we'll talk about the growth zone to wrap this up. But you had some thoughts about this slide, Beth.
Yeah, I really feel like when I looked at this slide, I saw the slide a couple of weeks ago, and I realized that this seems very fluid for me personally. I feel like there are times where I am, moving from the fear zone to the learning zone. And sometimes I feel like I'm in a little bit of growth, not as much as I'd like. And then sometimes I feel like I'm in all of them all at once. I mean, like I'm, it's funny because they mentioned specifically with the COVID, the toilet paper thing. And I have to say, when I'm in Publix, if I see toilet paper, I have to stop myself from reaching for it, because I'm thinking, I've got enough to last me through Christmas. I'm not, unless something horrible happens with my digestive system, I am not going to need that much toilet paper. And I guess I'm starting to recognize it a little more, which I think is a step in the right direction, Jane. And you can talk to me a little bit about, you can talk a little bit about that, but I feel like it's not, for me personally, it's not a straight line. So that was my insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being aware of our behaviors doesn't mean we'll necessarily change them. I'm aware. Right. Yes. I'm where I want to buy that toilet paper. And on a physiological level, I always go to the organic brain stuff, but that's that fight or flight piece that comes with the limbic system and limbic part of the brain. And, those are just real natural things. So again, whether I locked my keys in the car, oh, did I say that twice? Because I did it in the last couple of weeks. It's, I just have to smile and go, you're really busy, you're overwhelmed, this isn't a normal time, and be gentle with ourselves. And I think, that's, yes. We can be our own worst critic, and this is not the time to be doing that, whether it's just that caregiving role and in addition to having other events. I was a caregiver during 2 hurricanes, and I certainly could see some of these behaviors coming into play. Things that I had managed before and went smoothly were just out the window. So the worst case scenario came up for me around every corner. So the good news in the growth piece, which like you say, we'll go in and out of, I find with the growth piece, I want to surround myself with whatever brings me contentment. And that can be, picking up 3 carnations at Publix and putting it in a vase, so that my eye catches it. I tend to put birdseed just on the ground of my little bitty patio, so the squirrels come up and hang out and look through it. And so again, for whatever it is for you, everybody has their own piece that would be helpful. Mm-hmm. And I guess the saying that goes with this is endure with purpose. What is this time of life about? And again, it won't be the last event we have to manage. Just ordinary routine, regardless of the circumstances, has meaning. Mm-hmm. I used to joke with my kids, I love doing the dishes because I love the feel of the water, the soap, the warmth, I'm accomplishing something. So again, paying attention and being mindful about just everyday routines that help, again, calm us, keep us centered. I love this. Thank you, Lana, this slide. I use it often. I had it in my office and I have it on my back door before I walk out every day. Let us realize that what happens around us is largely outside of our control, but the way we choose to react to it is inside of our control. Exactly. And that may be the 3rd or 4th attempt, but that I think has a lot of value.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're right. My takeaway from that is just, you're exactly right. Let's be gentle with ourselves. Let's recognize ourselves and give ourselves as much grace as we would give anybody we love when it comes to this sort of thing, and understand that, I reserve the right to be smarter and better at things tomorrow than I am today.
I like that. Yes, good. So, well, I'm going to kind of segue into the warning signs. Again, I'm not focusing on all the negative, but these are things, again, that folks don't always sit with because we're trying to mask these feelings and symptoms. So the warning signs that you may experience, or you've seen them in others, is fatigue. And that's being tired all the time. Yeah. You wake up tired, you go to bed tired, the middle of the day you're tired. Again, that low energy. Irritability. You may have decrease in patience or tolerance with the person you're caring for and others around you. And how guilty we feel when that comes up for us. Mm-hmm. The other piece is extreme state of tension and stress. And again, I know I'm being repetitive, but making errors in areas of our life that you do not normally make. I can't quote the statistic or where it came from, but I read that there are more just household injuries, when folks are stressed, tension, having a caregiving role, anything from a kitchen knife accident to, uh, other things that wouldn't normally happen.
Oh yeah, I had a wonderful kitchen knife accident in February where I just wasn't paying attention, and I went into an avocado and I had it in my hand and sliced way down into my thumb and wound up, wound up into an emergency room and
Yes.
at an urgent care for stitches. And I find out later on that avocados are a great source of stitches because people hold them in their hands and they come down with a knife on the pit. So I was not paying attention.
Exactly.
Moving
Yes.
too fast, I was stressing and thinking about all the things I had to do, and so I testified.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what this article research focused on was, it may be a fender bender. It may be, that's not a simple thing that causes, a lot of distress for weeks and weeks. But again, those things are a result of just your mind being elsewhere and having multitasking. You may feel overwhelmed. The feeling, or you may express it, that something is too much. I can't do this anymore. Again, then feeling guilty that you said that. But again, these are symptoms we hopefully people pay attention to, and then we'll talk about finding resources to support and allay some of these symptoms. Disinterest in our usual activities. Maybe avoidance again of folks that we usually spend time with or stay in touch with, or returning calls to friends, families, turning down help and invitations. Those are some of the warning signs. If you see this being frequent, again, that self-awareness, that self-talk could help you find a direction to reduce these symptoms and connect with somebody that can help.
One of the things that I thought about when I was looking over these slides the other day, Jane, was the fact that these are also good things for us to be paying attention to if we're not necessarily the primary caregiver, but a family member or a friend of a primary caregiver. I could tell when my mom was the primary caregiver of my dad when he was struggling with Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia, and it's been just recent. It would ebb and flow and wax and wane, but there were times where I could tell, based on looking at these symptoms and these warning signs, that I needed to make a visit, or I needed to increase my phone calls, or send her a bunch of flowers, or see what I could do as a support system for a primary caregiver. So I think it's good to absolutely look at these things, as far as self-awareness, but also they're wonderful tips if you're wondering how to help a primary caregiver.
That's an excellent point.
And you're noticing that. One of the things that I also, when we talked about this slide a couple of days ago, was that I feel like, in addition to all these symptoms, also just a feeling of fragility is something that I've noticed in myself. And that kind of moves back to the conversation a couple of slides ago, where you talked about just being more easily moved to tears, kind of a thing. And it sort of reminded me, it was funny because it sort of emotionally sort of reminded me of the hormonal stuff that happened when I was pregnant. Does that make any sense?
Sure.
It's like like a Kleenex commercial would come on, and my husband would walk in the door, with a bowl of ice cream, and he'd say, "Hi, what's wrong?" And I'd say, "It's the Kleenex commercial." He'd say, "Why are you sobbing? It's a commercial." It's the sort of thing that I found, that sort of fragility. So
yes, absolutely. Yeah, that again, it's just an underpinning, and we may know it's there, we may not, but again, things that won't always feel like they make sense will bring that on. And just again, it's another time to be self-aware and sit back and gentle with ourselves. And that's thanks for bringing that up.
I think I think that all of these can be are lessened at least by my acknowledgement of my having a community around me, and that can be a formal community, a physical community of my neighborhood and my friends. It can be my support system, and that can be organizations like Assisting Hands or the Sunflower House, or all kinds of resources out there, and so.
Yeah, and again, what happens with the avoidance is we don't always reach out to those organizations.
Right.
Or folks may suggest it, and right away we turn that down. So again, this is just kind of a defense mechanism. I have to stay in a certain role or a certain mode to accomplish what's in front of me. And so again, it's wonderful when folks, regardless of the feedback they get from us, will take that risk and nudge us a little bit.
Yes.
Well, you talked about how to get relief and some of the resources. Healthcare professionals are a great avenue for, your primary care doctor. You may feel if they don't, they have that 5-minute window with you, but it's certainly you can establish a relationship with their support staff and, ask them what resources are available. So not all caregivers at this time take care of their own healthcare needs because they're preoccupied. Even if, like you say, you're long distance, it has a lot of your attention. So, don't forget about our healthcare professionals and their staff, and reach out to them with some of your needs and questions and feelings. Community organizations have been proactive in offering support groups and services over the years. And even now, like this media that we're going through, isolation doesn't necessarily mean we have to be cut off from some of those services and support systems. People may feel I can't access what I used to. I can't attend my group. Everything from a book club to your caregiver support group. So, we have to be mindful, what other ways can we reach out and still have these things in our life to lift us up?
And during COVID, it's it's even, it's exacerbated with COVID right now. I mean, my mom is, she goes to Mahjong, she plays euchre, and all of those things are on hold right now. And so her friends, every once in a while, her friends will come by. My mom will be sitting in the driveway, and my mom and I will be sitting in the driveway in the morning, and one of her friends will come by on their bike or in their golf cart, and they'll just pull up a chair 6 feet away and just talk for a half an hour, and it just feels so different on the backside of that, than it does, you can just feel that everybody goes, I talked to somebody,
Yes, yeah, that's so valuable. Yes. Oh my goodness. Well, outreach like today's program.
Absolutely.
And being able to use telemedicine, and it's such a positive avenue for caregivers. Not everyone lives in a neighborhood where they know their neighbors. I mean, that's just a reality for us. So, just being familiar and looking even what the library offers. I did want to mention here, on a very positive note, how encouraged I am when awareness of the challenges and the issues facing caregivers is brought to the forefront. Only then can people be aware of resources and explore solutions and have this conversation. So again, thank you for this being part of that. I'm also, as you and I talked about, so in awe of someone's ability to meet difficult life events. Over the years, I just, the human spirit is amazingly resilient, And for folks to be able to maintain a focus and well-being during just difficult times of crisis and demand on them is just amazing.
Yeah,
I'm sure you've seen that as well with
yeah,
your
I
mom.
think we all need to recognize that too, Jane. I think that brings up a great point. I think that even when we can't, point to a whole lot of other things that are going well in our lives, at least we can very often need to acknowledge the resiliency and the fact that we're going to get up and do it again tomorrow.
Yes.
And we're
exactly.
we're still here and we're still doing it, And yeah, it's tough. And yeah, I messed it up. And yeah, I'm not sitting in the perfect person chair at the dinner table this week, but I'm doing it again. And that resiliency. And I think that's, we need to acknowledge that for ourselves as caregivers.
Yeah, absolutely. I did want to refer to, and we'll have another slide, the National Alliance on Mental Health. Mm-hmm. This organization provided steps to reduce symptoms the caregiver may experience and regain a sense of well-being. And I always like to add calm. It's so important on a physical and emotional level for us to avoid functioning in that crisis mode. So we're not pushing adrenaline and cortisol and those chemicals that keep us revved up. This state of alertness we know is harmful on a physiological level. So keep in mind when we're talking about these, as you and I mentioned, they're the ideal.
Right.
And when we're providing care, or even whether it's long distance or in-home, achieving the ideal is again, keep using that word, a challenge. So that progress is not perfection.
Right.
But this is a start. And even if I was able to benefit from one of these tools, it was a good start. It would maybe trigger and lead to further progress.
Right.
So the first one is maintaining a routine. And this is, again, a bit of a stretch, but stick to a regular bedtime and waking schedule. And I know, as well as you do, our sleep may be interrupted in the night to attend to, our family member, or because of our own health issue.
Right.
Or pain.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. I am of an age where I don't know what it's like to go the entire night without having to get.
Exactly. So again, we're talking about the ideal. And the other piece that keeps us up at night is that busy mind, which we'll talk about. Right. I'll talk about later. But if we just had the habit of settling in at a consistent time, mm-hmm. turn down exposure to light, to noise, a very cool environment, the central nervous system will respond if it's done consistently.
Yeah, and the screen time, not having our phone next to us.
Yes, I think the latest is 2 hours prior to,
So hard to do.
Yeah, it is, because it's part of that entertaining, what gives you contentment. I like my puzzles or whatever it is. So, but just again, for the message you're giving your central nervous system is, I'm okay, this is good, It slows down your breathing. And I know most of us have heard about, the gratitude list. And when you're in that winding down state, name 3 things that you're grateful for. You don't have to write it down, just name 3 things. And it's scientifically proven. In fact, I pulled up like 6 articles to look at, to once again validate this, that gratitude is beneficial. It restores a sense of well-being. It reduces toxic emotions, even helps with physical pain. So just 3 things you're grateful for. The second piece is how to start your day. And again, this is challenging, to shower and dress in the morning. First thing, shower and dress. And when you're in the shower, then you can get your 3 gratitude pieces in for your morning. So that's the 3 at night and the 3 in the morning. And I know I've had folks say to me, and it's like, I haven't showered in 3 days, but if you can, whether you ask for help with this, find a 15-minute window, as consistently as possible. Refreshing feeling physically refreshed goes a long way mentally.
Right, to start your day and be able to kind of handle the tasks in front of you. If you feel like you haven't, it's amazing what just a hot shower can do, just to make you feel like, okay, I'm ready to start my day.
Absolutely.
Something so small as that. Yes, and yet
Right.
so huge. Right.
And again, it's just finding these small windows to do that. The next challenge, and I won't go into it because we all know how hard it is to have a consistent routine around meal time. Avoid going too long in between meals, which we can do. We can have maybe a piece of toast at breakfast while we're doing something, and then all of a sudden it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So, try to avoid going a long time in between meals, and pay attention how often we go for that quick carb snack. Just to fill us up or hold us over. So again, these are intellectually, we know this. It's just reminders, gentle, to, put this into our routine. Now more than ever, taking those reasonable precautions that we hear about, hand washing, social distancing. Ask anyone that comes on your property, in your home, to wear a mask.
Right. I keep one right by my door. I keep an extra one right by my door. Yep.
Excellent. Mental hygiene, and this is my favorite, is all about movement. And folks will say, well, I don't sit down all day. I'm busy all the time. There's always something to do. Well, if we're busy, and maybe that involves a little stress, the movement is we're holding our muscles tight, and we're shallow breathing.
Right.
And again, that impacts the physiology. The movement I'm talking about is, deep breaths. So while you're waiting for the microwave, take deep breath into the belly, through the nose, and blow it out through the mouth, and try to exhale longer than you inhaled. And so again, finding those little opportunities so I build that in. If I've hit the microwave, I do my breaths during the day. To get oxygen. Go ahead.
I actually heard a thing. I was coming back from work the other day. I think it was Terry Gross on NPR had I'm not sure. Then had somebody on was talking about mindful breathing, and the fact that you can actually lower your pulse rate by taking deep breaths. There's a direct physiology between taking deep, slow breaths and exhaling longer than you inhale will release those, the stuff we need to be able to, lower our, reduce our pulse rate. I mean, how much more physiological can you get than just recognizing that it has a direct result?
Yes, bringing down your own heart rate.
Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly. Yeah, and again, it's not, you don't have to go off into another room to do it. You just, again, find little windows. Stretching, again, getting oxygenated blood, stretching. So again, while the microwave's on, or while you're, a brief moment in between something else, just stretch your arms over your head. If you can, and not due to any health issue, do a forward bend, and just really separate the disc spaces in your spine, and just hang down there like a rag doll.
Right.
So whatever stretching, you can go online and I look up senior stretching, and when we stretch, we also get those feel-good chemicals we hear about, serotonin and dopamine. And so again, stretching so important. My example of that is I would go once a day when my dad was finally in skilled care, and feed him once a day, one meal, lunch or dinner. And it would take him 30 plus minutes to eat a small meal. And while I was there, besides chatting and rambling, I would do ankle rolls sitting in the chair. And I would do calf stretches, and I would do twists back twists in the chair. So I wasn't trying to multitask. I just knew it was an opportunity, because then I was going to get in the car, and sit. So there's small ways we can work this into our daily routine.
Sure. Every time if I'm watching television with a loved one, every time there's a commercial on, I could take the opportunity to stretch an arm, or just to bring an arm across the shoulder.
Yes. So many.
Move my head. You're right. And kind of gently move those big muscles, getting some blood flow. If you're not, even though we feel like we're moving all the time, I don't know. You're right. Stretching is huge.
It is, again, because when we're busy and we're taking the garbage out, we're making up the bed, or at the grocery store, again, we're holding unknowingly.
Right.
Most of the time we're holding our body tight. And you don't need to buy expensive equipment. I keep, a bottle of water next to my chair as a weight, or a can of soup or whatever.
Right.
So, yeah. So that's, again, I get excited about that part. It's worth mentioning again, to try not to fixate on sleep.
Yep.
What I have done, and a tool I've used with clients, is before going to bed, and it's not another to-do thing, but before going to bed, just jot down your to-do list for tomorrow, as well as if there's a major concern or worry. So just, I need to call this, I need to pick up this, just jot it down. And I would leave this notebook in another room, not by my bedside. It takes less than a minute. And if you're lying in bed awake, just, again, pay attention, as you said, to your breathing, those slow movements, maybe pull your feet towards your head. Just lie there content that you're relaxed, rather than the thoughts, I can't believe I'm still awake. This is ridiculous. I'm getting up, whatever. It's just, you're there, So again, reduce the judgment about, I'm still not asleep.
Well, and that list that you're talking about can really sometimes help that mental list that we get when we lay in bed, and we're saying, oh, I've got to remember to do this. I've got to remember to do that. I don't know that I was supposed to call the lawn guy back. Oh, my doctor, I needed to reschedule that appointment. Oh, I forgot to put milk down. To do all of those things deliberatively before you crawl into bed, I think can help reduce that worry, and physically writing it down, can put it, and physically putting it somewhere else can help us emotionally and mentally put it somewhere else, so that we can clear our mind enough.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, this is not new. I love this piece I just mentioned, goes back to the Mayan culture. And they had very small little dolls they would make out of twine or grasses or whatever. And they were called worry dolls. And you can buy little worry dolls, 4 little worry dolls in a little basket. And I purchased for my granddaughter before. But, you take the worry down, you just give it the issue or the concern or whatever, and you put it back in the basket, and then they'll hold that for you. So again, so much of this goes back to other cultures and another time.
And you don't have to pick the worry doll back up. You can just let the worry stay with the worry doll.
Absolutely.
Until you're ready to pick it back up, or you can just forget about it.
Right. So
what a great idea.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun. So I'm going to throw up another diagram here.
Oh, wait a minute. Before
yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that I think you and I talked about, along with other, things that we can do to help relate, is to maybe take a break from the news. We talked about that. And,
thank you.
And although here we are on social media, here we are on Facebook and on the website, I'm going to say that it's also okay. It's counterintuitive, I know. But I think it's also okay to kind of just take a break from the social media every once in a while. There's so much stuff out there right now that's just adding to our worries, our frustrations, whether it's whether it's the stuff that's happening with the social justice and the racial injustice, or the COVID stuff, or unemployment, all those things that we're worried about right now.
Yes.
You know, if we can just let's watch I Love Lucy tonight instead of CNN. You know, let's watch the Pickers. Let's watch the, instead of CNN. I love Property Brothers. They're very easy on the eye, and I could watch them all night.
That's good. Yes, it is. Be mindful what we bring into this body and mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thanks so much, because that was such a good point. And I think we all are trying to do a little better balance of that. Yeah. This 4 phases of life event, this has been used with an emergency management training. We used it when I worked with folks during Hurricane Katrina, and it certainly applies now as the 4 phases of an event, a life event. The first, it could be anything, as I said, from a natural disaster to a health crisis. You get that diagnosis, or you receive that phone call and mom's had a stroke or mom's had a serious fall. So that's your event. And though we will begin to act, that's our response, is your physiology is sitting with the shock. And so just being aware that part of you is taking a break to sit with the disbelief. So you're sitting with the shock, and then think of your role as moving through the next few days versus having all the answers. And I think that can come up, whether, like you just said, something came up with lawn service or whatever, you don't have to have all the answers. So one moment at a time versus what am I going to do long term? What can I do today?
That's really interesting that you mentioned it. I want to just highlight what you just said there, Jane, that when you're sitting with the shock, what I'm getting from that is, I'm not all of me can be super engaged, because some of me, you're right, some of me is just processing that. And that's taking up a chunk of my thought process. So I'm not going to be able to fully engage when I'm still trying to process the event.
What just happened?
Right. Yeah. What just happened? What does, without even starting to think of the next move. So until I can, and it's important that I think we do process the event so we don't get stuck there, right?
Yes, absolutely. And again, we're great doers, but part of our physiology will want us just to be. And so, as much as we can, just the awareness of it.
Are you saying we need to be human beings and not human doers?
Yes, I love that. Yes. Thank you. Was that Wayne Dyer, one of my gurus?
So.
Yes. So that's phase 1, is the event happens. Phase 2 is recovering phase. And it's not recover phase. It's not recovered phase. It's recovering, because this is when you're developing a strategy for yourself, as well as, let's use mom as the example. And this phase lasts from weeks to years, depending on the need. So again, this is open-ended, unknown.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about dealing with the unknown.
And sometimes we're, what I'm finding that personally, that life happens, and then when I'm working through one event, another one comes roaring in the door, and I'm like, whoa, hold the phone here. I'm not finished dealing with this, and now you're telling me that there's a pandemic? Like my
exactly.
Mom, sometimes it feels like 2 + 2 = 5. Like it's compounding. That's for what that's worth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So again, just being aware that this is everything. You're not going to wrap this up in a day.
Right.
It's just ongoing, and just giving yourself permission that you don't know what tomorrow will look like. You have skills and tools and resources that you'll pull out when you know. And that's the piece talking about resources. And there's 3 types of resources. There's personal, professional, natural. and personalize our own strengths and resilience, maybe information we have based on previous experiences. And important here is take time to know your limits. What can I do about a situation? What can't I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
There are some, just that acceptance around that. Professional is medical, legal, economic, housing, and agencies such as yours and home care. So those are all the professional potential resources to help us through this unknown amount of time and activity. The third is harder to access or ask for help, and it's family, friends, neighbors, our employer, making sure we have what we need or the time off to do what we need. Could be someone's faith community. You and I talked about what wonderful neighbors your parents have, that your mom and and your mom had.
Yeah, and sometimes with my mom, so again, I feel like I'm oversharing a little bit. My mom struggled and eventually had to place dad, but her support system and her friend system, they just kind of kept themselves there, and they would call her, or they would stop by, or they, a lot of phone calls, or they would stop by to see dad. And I think that that's really important for those of us who are supporting primary caregivers to recognize that maybe there isn't a whole lot we can do, actively right now. And sometimes there is, but to understand that we can when we can recognize when there is something we can actively do. So maybe there isn't time right now, but just hang in there, to say, hey, your mahjong spot's going to be ready when you're ready, we'll come back, or we're going to get together and have coffee again, or when you get done, those sorts of things. So sometimes it's about just letting that primary caregiver know that when you're ready, we're ready, and we're there when you need us, because there's so many, I know there were times where we would have that conversation, and exactly what you said before, that, oh, I'm so busy, I don't even have time to take a shower. How am I going to have time to go have coffee? Or how am I going to have time to go do that? I don't even, I haven't shaved my legs in 3 months.
Right.
Both legs all the way up.
Yes, right.
So how do I have that? How do I carve out time? That's just one more thing to do. So sometimes it's that you can be a support for folks, even by just letting them know you're there, even by not saying, oh, well, we're going to have to go do this now, but just to say, hey, I'm thinking about you, writing a simple card to a friend who is struggling with caregiving, or a loved one. Again, a phone call. I think little written cards are wonderful. It's a lost art, Jane. I got a little note from one of my dear friends, and it just brightened my day. I mean, it physically came in the mail. There was more than junk mail and bills, and it was just like, wow, I got a card from Roberta. This is great.
Isn't it? And you continue to look at it day after day. You
Absolutely.
Put it where you see
it. Got it up on I've got it, and then my cousin sent me a card, and they were just cuz cards. They weren't even associated with an event. They were just sort of like, hey, I'm thinking about you. And so those kinds of things they can really brighten someone's day if they're struggling with isolation or caregiving,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, so many folks just don't think about asking for help.
Right.
I've worked with adult children who have found themselves in this recovering phase with their family member, and they said, I'm an only child. I knew someday it would come back to bite me or whatever. It's like, no, let's start talking. And they had all sorts of folks in their life.
Right.
And yet again, we have to give ourselves permission and also tolerate that some people may turn us down.
Right.
And if one person turns you down, don't stop asking other folks. you know, because I think that's the hardest thing, to finally ask for help. And then, you know, someone's being honest and they're not available.
You know, and that's okay. I think that's also okay too when we're dealing with, you know, as I'm aging, I'm recognizing that my friends have all got their own struggles. And I think that it's also okay for us to say to our, you know, not right now, maybe I can in a little bit, you know, and so to understand the scope of what we can give is also important, you know, so you're right to allow ourselves that. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll go to the third phase, which is rebuilding. And that's when you feel as if a new foundation, a new normal, which gets overused, but it's accurate, and you're creating a new way of being. In this phase, you're addressing emotional, physical, financial, and relationship changes, because they do change. Maybe you've had to move, maybe you've changed jobs, and you're earning less income.
Right.
You know, so there's all sorts of things that may happen once this rebuilding phase, due to the event, whatever it is, has kind of found steady ground. And then the fourth phase is stability and security. And this is ongoing throughout our lifespan. This is a reason to celebrate. You have new strengths, new information, new strategies. You've moved through the event. And, you know, going forward, you can use all those tools and skills and strengths to meet the next challenge. All the stages involve hope and hopefully increase our confidence that we're doing our best every day. So again, I think resiliency, absolutely. So that's that phases of a life event.
Yeah, I do think that there's sometimes that we might be when we're in more than one life event at the same time, we can be in different stages at the same time. Like I said before, sometimes I feel like I'm, you know, I might be here with one event and here with another event, and then all of a sudden something happens and this has moved itself down, you know. You know, it's a juggling act, and there are many times that those balls have hit the floor, you know.
Yeah, and you're right. There's never just one event going on. So, right.
Good Lord has a sense of humor, does he not? Yes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. What I love is anything that's happened to me up to this point, I have something I can share with someone else.
That's such a great point.
You know, yeah. I just, you know, it's like, oh, this may not work for you, but let me tell you what I found. You know, in a similar, doesn't have to be exact situation. So that's, go ahead.
No. So I was just thinking that in that stability, security, when you feel like you kind of have your feet under you again, that's, you know, I mean, that's where I feel like that's what I'm there, is the ability to, it helps for me to be able to answer that question, why did this happen? You know, sometimes I think we all get those questions in our head. Why am I going through this for? Why are we going through this again? And, you know, sometimes it's to get through the other side of it, one of those silver linings can be that you can move forward and help someone else, and pay it forward to another person.
Absolutely.
Who's doing that. And say, you know, I can, let me tell you what happened here. Here I've got, and sometimes that's, you know, here I've got the shower chair I don't need anymore, or here I can
absolutely
give you a call, or I can, you know, help you with this piece. So to be able to look and be able to be able to help someone else, and that gets you out of your own head too. I think the best way for me to get out of my own worries is to start to think externally about other people.
Other people, absolutely, yeah. Well, I'm going to go back to self-care because I don't believe, I believe this can't be stressed enough.
Absolutely.
I'll use what we hear so often, if we're told before flight, if you're traveling with a child or someone who needs assistance and the airplane loses cabin pressure, oxygen masks will deploy. place it on yourself first, and then on the person you're assisting or your child.
So much
And
easier to say than do, Jane. So much easier.
absolutely. So I'm going to keep saying it. Your health and your well-being is a priority.
Right.
You know, we find caregivers don't always attend to their own physical and emotional and mental needs, and don't keep their appointments for various reasons. And every caregiving situation has similarities. I know we're talking about our experiences and witness with other folks. They have similarities, but also each caregiving situation is unique. And so hopefully some of these tools that we're presenting will just give someone, you know, a piece to explore and look at. I'm going to introduce, go ahead.
No, when I was just wanted to throw out there is that a phrase that I had heard from, I don't know, it was one class or another that I was taking a long time ago, is you can't give what you don't have. And if you don't have enough in reserves in your own well, how long are you going to last? Because caregiving is not a sprint. It's not a one and done. When we get to the point where we're caregiving for folks, it is a marathon, and we have to pace ourselves, and we have to constantly be looking at refilling our own well, or we won't be there for those we love. And then what are they going to do when we can't do it anymore? You know, so
thank you. Yeah,
yes.
Excellent point. This wheel of wellness, this slide was taken from Clarion University in Clarion, Pennsylvania. And what is inside the wheel is geared towards students and their self-care and their, you know, what they need to do to move forward, but it applies across the board.
Totally applicable.
And yes, very applicable. I would give clients an empty wheel and have them fill in and look at what fuels them and what drains them. And if a slice of the pie that was draining them was filled with experiences and events, we just looked at how they could balance that. Few of us can attend to all of these aspects of life equally. Again, progress, not perfection. But I believe it's such a great, helpful visual to see and remember which of these areas are getting my attention versus which of the areas are not.
And are you saying that, I mean, I looked at this wheel the other day for myself, and I realized that, you know, there are some times where I'm going to be picking and choosing different areas, and that there are going to be some of them are not going to be as robust as others. And it might be areas, and so my section really kind of went to the bottom half of this wheel: the environmental, the social, and the physical.
Okay.
For me, those were the areas that I was most able to kind of, you know, wrap my head around. I don't know if that made sense, but.
No, absolutely. And again, we just want to look at what are we drawn to, maybe because it's comfortable,
right?
Or again, due to life events, you know, maybe a job loss, financial may have, you know, every bit of this. Yeah,
absolutely.
And so again, the physical piece is moving your body, nutrition, sleep, keeping your own medical appointments, and the socializing, and we've talked about the friends. And so again, look at the slice of the pie and write down what you feel, you know, call a friend today, or a daily inspirational reading may be useful. The intellect piece could just be watching something on the Smithsonian Channel that helps you get your mind in a different direction. So these aren't, you know, intellectual isn't taking a college class online. It's just things that get your physiology in a different space.
Yeah, that's what I did last night. Mom and I watched the Ken Burns series on Roosevelt, which was all his time period. I love me some Ken Burns. He's from my old neck of the woods up in New England, and so it was wonderful. And you know, it was such an escapist thing to be able to do on one level, and yet I could tell that it was activating other portions of my brain that it felt like it kind of gone to sleep. And I think that's what you're talking about here, is let's activate some other neurons.
Yeah, these aren't major pieces. It can be very simple. The physical and the emotional can be in transplanting a plant into another pot and getting your hands in the soil.
Oh, love that.
Yeah. So I like the environmental piece that's going on right now with everyone decluttering and cleaning out closets, and that contributes to emotional well-being. Again, the research is there. If our space is clear and organized, we have there's fewer potential for our emotions to get triggered. So it's, again, I think this is a useful tool for folks to look at.
My great decluttering in my closet tip that I heard a friend of mine, and I know I've seen it on some of the shows, is you take the hanger and you turn it backwards. Have you heard of that in your closet?
Yes.
And
yes.
After a year or 2 or 3, if you haven't turned it, every time, so when you pull it out of the closet and you wear it, then you put it back in the right way. But if you haven't moved it in a year or 2, then maybe you could put it in a bag or a box and put it someplace else and get it out of your closet, or even better, maybe donate it to someone who could get some use out of it. So,
absolutely. I always thought someone else could get joy or enjoy this. Yes.
Yep.
So absolutely. So again, these tools will help you develop resources. Who can I ask, or what can I do? So just right now particularly feels very relevant to bring up. I kind of wanted, we talked about also touching base on when not all family members have a positive relationship over the years.
Right.
All family members are not in contact with one another. They're not going to be available, or there may be tension with one caregiver who lives closer, or who's more distant.
Not everybody. Not everybody has this. We don't know everybody's stories when it comes to their family.
Right.
And I think that there's, everybody has different relationships, and we need to honor that, and we need to recognize that. Sometimes there's backstories we don't get to know about family histories, and so I very much have found that through the years and working in nonprofits, where I've heard friends say, well, why doesn't her daughter help more? Or where is their son? Or I know he's got a brother who lives, and I think you don't always know the stories that are back there.
We don't know their stories, yes.
And we need to respect that. So
Absolutely.
We'll keep all of that in our head while we're doing everything else. I'm glad you brought that up, Jane.
Yes. And these are some of the things to think about when something unexpected comes your way, and it may be those relationships, is, know your personal limits and boundaries, saying yes when you need to, but also practice saying no. And, taking time for yourself, change your self-talk. Right. I should do better. I should, I should get over this, or whatever, it may be. And I can't say enough, regardless of maybe even the history with the person you're caring for, you're providing an amazing gift to another person. Yes. Their life is better as a result of what you're doing. So it may be a challenge to be with that person and do it. But again, don't forget what you're doing and giving yourself. Ask for help. So who can help? What would be helpful? Folks will call and say, what do you need this week, Jane? Or I'm off on Friday. What do you need? And so define it. I mean, my mind would go blank, and I wouldn't be able to think what would be helpful or what do I need. And then maybe, an hour later, I think, I wish I'd asked them too.
Keep a list. Keep a list on your phone. You're right. That's what we talked about. Right.
Absolutely. So I think that's so useful to really be able to define for folks what would be helpful. And We talked about long distance support was one of the last things we kind of wanted to touch on was who and what,
Right.
Who's going to be available, who can help and what would be available. Also, just as you brought up beautifully earlier, is just being the person that listens, you know, just the one that you pick up the phone and say hi, and the person goes, oh, and say, okay, go for it. So being able to listen.
You don't have to say a word for the next 20 minutes because they're just spewing. Yes.
Yes.
I think that that's one of the things that you know, children of caregivers, if they're SIBs, they can kind of look to their own strengths and say, you know, hey, I really like to do research, or I really like to be able to be in contact with, or I can take the maybe the legal piece, or I can make sure that I can just be the one that listens, so that we can each take a little bit of a piece here, and many hands make light loads, you know.
Absolutely. Someone may be a great communicator with the healthcare professionals and note taker and medical record keeper. So again, look at what folks are willing to do in the, let's say, family, and hand out the assignments. I think that's
exactly.
as I put here, divide and conquer.
Right. Exactly.
And we also mentioned just kind of at this end here that we talked about when the caregiver role ends suddenly. You know, how everything I feel we've mentioned today definitely applies to that time too, because it's another change.
Another event, right.
Another event that suddenly it ends, and whether you knew it was coming or not, that does not make a difference.
I'm going to throw a little plug in here.
Please.
For our caregiver transition support group that we have had in the past at Sunflower House. Of course, we're on a pause right now because of COVID, but we will be bringing that back, and that's exactly for these folks. It's for those people who have been caregivers and have redefined their life as a caregiver, and they put kind of almost everything else on hold, and then all of a sudden that's changed because they're no longer caregiving, and then they're faced with this, well, now who the hell am I and what am I doing, you know?
Right.
So yeah, you're right, and then you're right back into that 4 phases of life, right? You know.
Yes.
So
yeah, it's definitely transition. Anything else you want to add? I'm again so grateful for you to support this and make this available for folks, and appreciate you and Lana Andrews.
I appreciate Assisting Hands being here, and Jane being willing to, and Lana being willing to give of your time and your talents. I think this has been an extraordinary hour that we've spent together, Lana. I think what I would love to have now, if you'd like to come on and kind of talk a little bit about what Assisting Hands is and the services that are available if and when people who are caregiving find that they might need to reach out to a company that can provide professional services.
Yeah, so thank you, Beth. You know, one of our greatest attributes is the ability to have amazing partners in the community. You know, I think nobody gets anywhere without tremendous support, whether that's, you know, we've talked about different parts of that today, right? Whether that's personal or professional. And when they come together and become both professional and personal, it's quite an extraordinary thing. I think that the partnership that I've formed with you, Beth, with several members of the Aging Matters staff has been outstanding. And so we're happy to be here and to support you. Assisting Hands Home Care is a private duty home care agency, and if you should need any resources and you just have a question, honestly, we're here to help you. We're here to lift up the community. We're not just here because we're a business. Our business is making sure that the people of Brevard County have the help and resources that they need. We just have our phone number here. Feel free to call us if you need our services or interested in our services. we can certainly let you know more about those. But also, if you have a question, we have a well-versed staff, and we work as a team, and we're happy to help the community at large. So again, numbers listed here. If you're interested in the slides, or there's anything like that, you can contact us. I know in this previous slide, you can email. He has the program and the presentation available for email. So please don't hesitate to call. I think that that's been one mistake people will make, is they stand in their own way when they need the help.
Right.
Thank you, Lana.
Oh, what a wonderful way to put it, Lana. You're right. Sometimes we can be our own worst enemies when it comes to getting help.
Yeah. It takes practice.
It does. And then we get good at it, and then something else happens, and we're bad at it again.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Well, again, I appreciate you both, and it's been a beautiful morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been an hour well spent, and
Yes.
I look forward to being able to see both Jane and Lana in person at the Sunflower House as soon as we can get things back up and running. I so appreciate you, and I hope you both have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to talking to you both again soon. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Have a good day.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.